Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Farnborough Air Show, about 30 miles southwest of London, one of the world's leading gatherings of defense leaders, military officers, industry executives, and aircraft from all around the world this year, commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Royal Air Force, the world's first independent air force. Our coverage here is sponsored by Leonardo DRS and Farnborough International. We caught up with Simon Everest, the director of the Defense and Security Organization that's part of the United Kingdom Department of International Trade. Tremendous amount going on. The Prime Minister, Theresa May, was here. Gavin Williamson, the Defense Secretary, rolled out the Future Combat Air Strategy here as we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the world's first independent Air Force, the Royal Air Force, to give UK industry that sovereign capability, which is so important for every nation. You're fresh off the win on the Type 26 frigate in Australia, massive campaign. I'm surprised you didn't qualify for Australian citizenship, given how much time you and the whole team was spending over there. Let's start with that warship order. Absolute watershed. A lot of folks didn't think that this British ship, designed for very stringent Royal Navy requirements, was going to have that traction, but there were believers, and a lot of folks over here said, just you wait, including George Zambellis, sort of the father of the Type 26. Talk to us a little bit about what this ship means for the maritime exports, a market that once Britain dominated, but now, weren't as big of a player, and now how that program and the 31E frigate, the Type 31E, will work together. What are the next marketing plans? Where's next for the entire maritime enterprise, the UK maritime enterprise on world markets?
Yeah, I mean, first I think, Vargo, to start with, for BAE Australia, it was a fantastic success story. And BAE Australia worked really hard with the customer out there, and we, UK government, worked really hard with the Australian government, and I think it's probably one of the best examples I think I've ever seen of a number of different parties working closely together. So UK industry, UK government, Australian government, etc., etc. All, I think, were really intimately and closely involved in making sure that the Australians got the capability that they wanted out of it. So, many congratulations to BAE Australia, and also for the UK. There's value in it for the UK, which is fantastic. And we and the MOD and the Royal Navy will continue working together to make sure that the Australians get the capability that they want. Quite what that means, and to your question really, in terms of exports more generally, yes, over the last 10, 20 years, the air domain has been at the heart of all UK defence exports. Generally speaking, each year, air domain exports about 85% of total UK defence exports. I think, proof in the pudding, as we say over here, in terms of what happens, but I'm really quite excited by maritime now, and I think success in the C5000 competition is just the start of things to come. There are other competitions for that going on, as you'll know, and as you said, we've got the Type 31, and it all links back to the National Shipbuilding Strategy and the work that the UK's put into that in terms of a sort of a pipeline of new capability coming through, and we can see some really quite exciting export opportunities around that.
So talk to us. The 26 is the high-end capability, very big ship, optimized for anti-submarine warfare, but also has a very powerful air defense capability. Type 31 is your more bargain-priced frigate, if you can say that, part of the maritime strategy, because the concern of whole force of Type 26s will be unaffordable for the Royal Navy. Let's develop an export frigate that then the service can buy as well. Talk to us about both pieces of the market. How many sales you project, and where, right? Canada is looking for ships. Sadly, you guys aren't in the U.S. Navy's competition. That certainly would have been very interesting to see. Full disclosure, Fincantieri and Huntington Ingalls Industries have sponsored us in the past, who are competing for that frigate award. And then the 31. Talk to us on both ends of this market, where you see opportunity.
I mean, I think obviously, fairly obviously, depending on the type of requirement you've got and capability, you will get different solutions that meet that. And as you say, at the top end, high-end ASW capability, countries like Australia, Canada, are key sort of potential customers for that. The other end, Type 31, more general purpose type frigate, RMOD, and again, this has been part of the narrative, I suppose, and part of the strategy in the UK is to, and you'll have heard me and my predecessors talk before about exportability, and that's at the heart of the Type 31. So building something for our Navy that is, we say sort of built for but not with, so to speak, so it can be adapted to suit whatever other customers want it to be. And as you say, it's at the lower end of the price point, and we're really quite excited about that as well in terms of what the opportunities might be. It's about the first time I think we've had such a substantial capability in the UK that's been built from the very start with exportability in mind.
So what's the value of this deal to British industry? Because folks have a tendency of looking at this and saying, well, you know, the Australians are going to be building it, so there isn't any value in it. But actually, there's quite a lot of value in it, isn't there? So talk to us about what the value proposition is from the UK side of the equation. Why is it great that the Australians picked this design, and what does that mean, and what will it mean, for example, if Canada and a number of other nations come aboard and acquire that ship as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly early days for Australia, because there's a way to go yet in terms of contract signature and content on the frigate, but we see initially value to the UK of £2 to £3 billion, something like that, and then I think it really does just depend, Varga, on where it goes in terms of how much UK content we can get on the frigate, and what the Australians want. The Australians are the customer. They will have a clear set of requirements, and UK industry will have to work with Australian partners to make sure that they can deliver that to meet the customer requirements.
As you mentioned, right, BAE has been selected as the preferred bidder in this case, so contract negotiations now are going to be ongoing. There are multiple different models of cooperation that have evolved over the last couple of years, and as I'm, and it's funny you mentioned what the Australians want. The Australians also have a very sophisticated defense industrial strategy of their own to try to manufacture as much as what they need at home, and shipbuilding is obviously one of those critical markets. Talk to us a little bit about where you go direct sale, where you're going to do intellectual property transfer, where do you go intellectual property plus. I know you have these multiple models in which you're working, because at the end of the day, I mean, you've underscored this, that exports are important, but it's also the relationship, the long-term relationship, and every customer is different in what they want. Walk us through the various models you're using to engage the dozens and dozens of delegations that you're meeting with here.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head, Varga, where there is no one size fits all. Every customer will have a different requirements and a different strategy and a different approach, and I think you can say from the start that gone are the days where any company, whether they're UK or anywhere in the world, you can't just turn up as a company and expect to sell something. It doesn't work like that anymore. There's always a wider wrap around it that the customer nation, and you could include the UK in that as well, will want to see. And the different models can vary from a straight, UK company in our case working with a potential customer, whether that's a government or a company, with no UK government involvement at all, or it could be a full-on government-to-government type agreement if the customer wants that, or there are very, very many different variants of sort of halfway houses. The key thing, I think, is to make sure that the UK industry is working with potential partners overseas, and that we are working closely as across the UK government with any part of the potential customer government if they want that to happen.
You mentioned designing systems with exportability in mind, seeing as how that was kind of key. It was the global combat ship in many cases when Sir George would talk about it as First Sea Lord, former First Sea Lord. Gavin Williamson, the Defense Secretary, is launching there's going to be a new SDSR, a new Strategic Defense and Security Review next year. The industrial implications of it are going to be very important. Philip Dunn, former Minister for Defense Procurement, has put a set of 41 recommendations. If I recall, our interview with Philip Dunn is on our website. Talk to us about the input that you're putting into this defense industrial strategy. The UK historically has not, or at least I should say in the past couple of decades, not put exportability as a primary thing. We saw that with the Type 26. What's the input you're going to be giving in this new industrial strategy that the government is trying to put together that balances sovereignty, exportability, domestic capability? Walk us through what approach the government needs to embrace on this.
Yeah, I can't Also, I can't really comment on what the MOD is doing with its defence strategy, and the MDP. That's very much MOD business, not DIT business. I think what I can say is that as a Department of International Trade and as DSO within that, we are very much continuing what we've always done in terms of working with the UK industry to try and secure defence and security, and that includes cyber nowadays, export orders for the UK. UK has a fantastic track record in defence and security exports, 5.9 billion defence in 2016, 4.3 billion security including cyber, and cyber nowadays is about almost 50% of the security exports. Wow. Our export statistics for 2017 will be released on the 31st of July. Can't talk about them now, but they'll be on the gov.uk website then, so I would urge you and your listeners to have a look at the website then. Yeah, very much the same as usual. We work very closely with the MOD, with the Home Office, with other government agencies to bring the whole of the UK government together in support of UK companies who are looking to export.
Let me take you to the FCAS, the Future Combat Air Strategy. Every time a strategy like this is rolled out, I'm sure that 3/4, if not all of the people that you meet with aren't going to say, well, okay, so what does this mean? What does this mean in terms of the capability or how do we get involved? What are you going to be telling them from your end of the business? Granted that is a defense thing, but you do have D in your name, which is the reason why I asked that last question. I know that you're Department of International Trade, but it does, when that part of the D does something, it affects your part of the D, and you do, and right. I mean, the great thing about the British government is that it is very joined up in how some of these things are pursued. What are you going to be telling people when they ask you about this new strategy? What it means? What it may mean for them looking a decade and a half downstream?
Well, there are two things probably, Vargo. I think one is that there are a huge range of current UK defence capability which there is still a demand for. And we will work, as I said, with industry and other governments to make sure that happens. We've also, of course, got an eye on what future capability in the UK is going to be and how exportable it is. So some of the conversations that I have, for example, with my counterparts in the MOD are around exactly that. And then when we have either separate or joint conversation with industry, we just have, the message is that the government is here to support you. That's the message for UK industry. Government's here to support you and work with you. And when we're talking to overseas customers, it's just a question of talking to them about the wide range. And it isn't just something now that the UK's got, but it will be something in the future. And there will be this pipeline of UK defence capability that will be exportable. And it's certainly my job and all of my team's job, and working with, as I said, with the rest of the government to make sure that the narrative sort of emphasises what the UK's strengths are.
Let's give you market by market, sector by sector. Globally, where are the hot, now without divulging too much of your sales strategy, because I suspect that you might get an email from Liam Fox on that one. Hey, but I was just joking about that. Let's go around the globe from Europe to the Middle East to the Americas, Asia. What are each of the different things that each of these markets around the world is interested in for the full panoply that you guys have, whether from very, very top end of combat air systems, obviously on the maritime things, you have precision weapons, cyber, massive portfolio. UK firms are some of the leaders in security all around the world. As you said, I mean, just a tremendous sales success over the past decade and a half, where the focus really has shifted also to supporting that. And cyber is just an incredible statistic that half of that portfolio is going to cyber. Walk us through on these markets and the traction you're getting for the different products in your quiver, if you will.
I mean, I think, pretty much, I'll say it again, pretty much business as usual, Vargo. You can look at the Gulf. There are, as you'll know, several modernisation programs going on there, and we'll continue to work with them and support UK industry in addressing and meeting those modernisation requirements. Areas like Asia, where you've got increasing defence budgets, for example, there are significant opportunities there. And I'll be having, obviously, conversations this week with visiting delegations. We've got 45 countries represented here at Farnborough this week, and about 350 delegates, so fantastic opportunity for UK industry and government to have those type of rich conversations with those people. Also, the Gulf, Asia, on security, as you say, cyber, probably even 5 years ago, nobody was really talking about it, nobody really knew what it meant. Nowadays, there's a much better understanding globally of what the cyber threats are, and the UK has got a strong historic track record in addressing cyber threats, and there are a number of really niche UK companies that are working very hard and being very successful globally. And on the more general security side, interest in how the UK does policing, for example, how we manage large-scale events, how we look after our critical national infrastructure, etc., etc. There is just a lot of expertise here in the UK that countries, ranging from, the US right there around the globe, are interested in talking to us about.
And I should give a shout out, right? Modern computing invented in this country, as well as the World Wide Web invented in this country. So there you go on that. Alan Turing still remains an intellectual inspiration for so many, and anything that involves computing or math or advanced thinking. Let me take you to the question of an unsteady and an interesting trade dynamic right now. The UK is in Brexit. I'm not going to ask you to discuss that. But we have Brexit that's going on. We have a transatlantic trade war. We have a trans-Pacific trade war that's also heating up. And an American administration that has been putting America first and putting Buy American first. In that environment, what are the challenges you feel you've got to surmount, given that all of this stuff is happening pretty much simultaneously while you're in the business of advancing the nation's security interests at what is a very dynamic time? A lot of worry, for example, that the U.S. may start to push off, even from its closest allies, some components, and we've heard a little bit of feedback from folks that there is a little bit of a shift despite the importance of allies. From your perspective as the man who's heading up this enterprise that's worth, $10 billion to the United Kingdom, what are the challenges and how will you be working to try to navigate those, and including with your senior-most leadership?
Yes, well, obviously you wouldn't expect me to comment on any of the wider politics. I think all I would say is that we will continue to do what we do. UK industry is fantastic. It's got a really strong track record. There are always challenges in working with in the export market, always have been, always will be challenges, and we work as government with the UK industry to address them.
And one last question: you travel more than any other person I know. What is your trick to having a successful air show at the end of the day?
The trick is to remain calm, and we have a fantastic team that does absolutely everything to ensure that it all works. They do that every single show that we do. And there's lots of feet going madly under the surface, but on the surface all is serene. And keep calm and carry on.
Well said, Simon. Simon Everest, Director of the Defense and Security Organization at the United Kingdom Department of International Trade. Thank you so very much, and best of luck this week.
Great. Thanks very much, Fargo.